The warm afternoon sun reflected off the glass walls of First Republic Bank as a sleek Aston Martin pulled into the executive parking spot. Behind the wheel sat billionaire Darren Cole. In his hand, he carried a worn leather folder. Inside were the final documents belonging to his late mother. 6 months had passed since she lost her battle with cancer, and today, Darren had finally gathered the courage to close her bank account. It wasn't about the money, it felt like closing the final chapter on the woman who had sacrificed everything to give him a better life. The bank was unusually quiet. While the branch manager prepared the paperwork, Darren sat alone in the VIP lounge, staring at his mother's death certificate. Memories came rushing back, the nights she worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table, and how she always smiled through her exhaustion. He had promised to give her the life she deserved. He kept that promise, just too late. Suddenly, the bank's front doors opened. 2 little girls walked inside, holding hands. They were identical twins, no older than 6. Their clothes were worn but clean, and one carried an old envelope that looked like it had been opened 100 times. They walked up to the nearest teller. The teller smiled warmly. "Hi, girls. Where are your parents?" Sadie, the braver twin, answered softly, "Our neighbor brought us, but she had to go back to work." She tightened her grip on the envelope. "We need to see the person who gives people money. Our mommy is very sick and needs an operation. We want to borrow money so the doctors can make her better." The teller's expression softened with pity. "Oh, sweetheart, banks can't give loans to children. You need an adult to apply." The twins looked at each other, their hopeful smiles instantly vanishing. "But we don't have anyone else," Tessa whispered. "Mommy is too sick to come." From the VIP lounge, Darren had witnessed everything. He tried to look away, telling himself it wasn't his business. But something about those girls reminded him of his own childhood, standing beside his mother, facing adult problems no child should ever have to understand. Without another thought, Darren stood up, walked over, and knelt down to their eye level. "Hi," Darren smiled gently. "My name is Darren. What brings 2 brave girls to the bank all by yourselves?" Sadie carefully opened the envelope, revealing hospital bills, medical papers, and one slightly faded family photograph. "We brought everything we have," she said. Darren reached for the photograph. The moment he looked at it, his heart skipped a beat. The smiling woman holding the twins was a face he would never forget. 3 years earlier, on a stormy night, Darren had been trapped inside his wrecked sports car after a devastating highway accident. Smoke filled the cabin, and the doors were jammed. Through the pouring rain, while everyone else stayed back, a lone woman ran toward the burning vehicle. Ignoring the flames, she smashed the window, grabbed Darren, and dragged him out just seconds before the car exploded. When the paramedics arrived, she quietly vanished. He had searched for her for months, but never learned her name. Until now. Darren looked at the twins, his hands trembling. Is your mother's name Nadine Rivers?" The girls gasped. "You know our mommy?" Tears filled Darren's eyes. "I never knew her name, but 3 years ago, your mother saved my life." Turning to the branch manager, Darren said, "Postpone today's meeting. It can wait." Some things were far more important than paperwork. He turned back to the twins. "Would it be all right if you took me to your mom?" 20 minutes later, Darren's Aston Martin entered one of the city's oldest, most neglected neighborhoods. They climbed 3 flights of narrow stairs to apartment 3C. The apartment was tiny, but spotless. "Mama?" Sadie called out. "We're home." A weak voice answered from the bedroom, and a thin, exhausted woman stepped into the living room. Her face had completely lost its color. When she saw a stranger, she instinctively pulled her daughters close. "Mama!" Tessa rushed over. "We went to the bank, and we met Mr. Darren. He says you saved his life." Nadine stared at Darren. Slowly, recognition set in. "The highway," she whispered. "The accident?" Darren nodded, a grateful smile on his face. You pulled me out of that burning car, and you disappeared before I could even thank you. Nadine smiled faintly. I only did what anyone would have done. No, Darren shook his head. Most people were afraid to get close. You weren't. Darren looked at the medical bills on the table. The girls told me about the liver failure. Let me pay for the surgery. I'll cover every medical expense. Nadine looked at him in disbelief, her pride instantly kicking in. No. I can't accept that. You don't owe me anything. Darren spoke calmly. If our situations were reversed, if I had saved your life, and years later I found you like this, what would you do? Nadine answered instantly, I'd help. Exactly, Darren said. This isn't charity. This is gratitude. Looking at her daughter's hopeful eyes, Nadine realized they had done everything they could to save her. It was time to accept help. With tears in her eyes, she finally nodded. That evening, Darren drove Nadine to the city's best hospital. After running tests, the lead surgeon delivered tough news. We have a matching donor, but Ms. Rivers is extremely weak. We need to admit her immediately for intensive therapy. The surgery will have to wait 4 to 6 weeks until she is strong enough. Nadine panicked. My girls, who will take care of them? Before anyone else could speak, Darren looked at her. They'll stay with me. They'll be safe, and I'll bring them to visit you every single day. Nadine looked at the frightened young man she had rescued 3 years ago. Life had brought him back for a reason. Thank you, she whispered. The next morning, Darren packed the twins' small backpacks into his car. He knew how to run billion-dollar corporations, but he had no clue how to care for 2 6-year-old girls. He ordered pizza for dinner, set up video calls with their mom, and when they asked for a bedtime story, he froze. He thought for a moment, then shared something his own mother used to tell him, every storm eventually runs out of rain. So no matter how hard life feels, you keep walking, because sooner or later, the sun always comes back. As the weeks passed, they stopped feeling like strangers. One afternoon, Darren found Tessa crying outside school because kids had laughed at her old, repaired backpack. He immediately took the twins shopping and let them pick out any backpacks they wanted. Seeing them smile made his giant, empty mansion finally feel like a home. But as the surgery grew closer, the girls became quiet and consumed by fear. To distract them, Darren planned Mission Perfect Day. He took them to a beautiful riverside park where they skipped stones, fed ducks, and painted a massive blank canvas with bright colors. At the bottom, Sadie wrote one sentence, "Hope never gives up." That evening, they hung the painting in Nadine's hospital room. For the first time, Nadine truly believed she would make it out of there. 4 weeks later, the doctor walked in. We're ready. The surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning. The next day, the operation lasted 7 agonizing hours. Darren switched off his business phone, refusing to leave the twins' side. When the surgeon finally walked out and smiled, saying, "The surgery was a complete success," the twins burst into tears and threw their arms around Darren. For the first time in months, hope became certainty. Nadine's recovery took 2 long months, but finally, the day came when she was allowed to go home. Life slowly returned to normal, but Darren was no longer alone. He visited the small family almost every day for dinners, movies, and porch conversations. They had seamlessly become a family. 6 months later, Darren drove back to First Republic Bank. He stood in the exact same parking space, but this time, Sadie held one of his hands, Tessa held the other, and a healthy, radiant Nadine walked beside them. Darren walked into the bank and finally signed the paperwork to close his mother's account. As he signed his name, he realized the ultimate lesson his mother had spent her life teaching him: money could buy success, houses, and cars. But kindness built people. As they walked out, Nadine looked at him. I don't think we ever truly thanked you. Darren smiled warmly at the twins. You don't have to. Your family gave me something I thought I'd lost forever. Nadine looked at him curiously. What was that? Darren glanced at the girls before answering. A family. Outside, the afternoon sun reflected across the bank's glass walls. Darren had arrived 6 months ago believing he was closing the last connection to his past. Instead, he had found the future he never knew he needed. If this story touched your heart, please like and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss our next emotional journey. Thank you for watching, and remember, the sun always comes back after the storm. See you in the next video.